The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace, casting golden rays across the marble floors. William walked slowly down the long corridor, his footsteps echoing in the silence. His mind was heavy with thoughts that had kept him awake all night. Today was different. Today, everything would change. Kate waited in the blue drawing room, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She wore a simple navy dress, but her face showed the strain of the past few weeks. The doctor's words still rang in her ears like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. The diagnosis had come as a shock to everyone, but she had insisted on keeping it private until they could figure out the best way forward. The palace staff moved quietly through the halls, their usual chatter replaced by whispered conversations. Something was happening, though most of them didn't know exactly what. The air felt thick with unspoken words and hidden truths. King Charles sat in his private study, staring out at the palace gardens. His tea had grown cold hours ago, but he hadn't noticed. His mind kept drifting to his son and daughter-in-law. As a father, he wanted to protect them from the world's judgment. As a king, he knew that transparency was often the heaviest crown to bear. The phone on his desk had been ringing all morning. Palace advisors, government officials, and media representatives all wanted answers to questions that hadn't even been asked yet. But Charles had learned long ago that sometimes the most important conversations happened in silence, not in the noise of public demand. William paused outside the drawing room door. Through the gap, he could see Kate sitting by the window, watching the gardeners tend to the roses. She looked so peaceful, yet he knew the storm that raged inside her mind. The choice they were about to make would affect not just their family, but the entire monarchy. Inside the room, Kate heard William's familiar footsteps approaching. She had been preparing for this moment for days, rehearsing the words in her mind, but now that it was here, everything felt different. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. The palace had seen many secrets over the centuries. Kings and queens had made difficult decisions within these walls, choices that shaped the future of nations. Today would add another chapter to that long history, though the people walking these halls didn't yet know they were witnessing something that would be remembered for generations. A young staff member hurried past William in the corridor, carrying a silver tray with fresh flowers. She nodded respectfully, but kept her eyes down. The palace protocol was clear about not staring at the royal family. But she couldn't help noticing the tension in Prince William's shoulders. William's personal secretary had tried to schedule 3 different meetings for this morning, but William had canceled them all. Some conversations couldn't be rushed or planned around other appointments. Some moments demanded complete attention, even if the rest of the world had to wait. Kate's phone buzzed softly on the table beside her. Messages from friends asking about lunch plans and charity events. Normal life continuing, while her world felt like it was standing still. She had always tried to maintain that balance between royal duty and personal happiness, but lately, it seemed impossible. The morning light shifted as clouds moved across the sky. Kate watched the shadows dance across the carpet, remembering how she used to do the same thing as a child in her family's home. Simple moments of peace before life became complicated with titles and responsibilities. William finally reached the door and paused with his hand on the handle. Behind this door was his wife, his best friend, and the mother of his children. Together, they had faced public scrutiny, media storms, and the constant pressure of royal life. But this challenge felt different. This was about more than duty or tradition. This was about love, fear, and the courage to be vulnerable in front of the entire world. He turned the handle and stepped inside. Kate looked up as he entered, and in that moment, they both knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, but now it felt like a spotlight, illuminating a stage where their next act was about to begin. The palace around them seemed to hold its breath, as if even the ancient walls understood that something significant was about to unfold. Staff members continued their daily routines, but there was an electricity in the air that made everyone move a little more carefully, speak a little more quietly. In his study, King Charles set down his pen and stood up slowly. It was time to join his family. Whatever decision they made today, he would support them. The crown might demand certain things, but being a father demanded even more. William closed the door softly behind him and walked toward Kate. She stood up as he approached, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other. No words were needed to communicate the weight of what they were carrying together. The decision they had made in private would soon become public knowledge, changing everything. Kate reached for William's hand, finding comfort in the familiar warmth of his touch. They had talked through every possible outcome, every potential reaction, from the public and the press. But talking about it and actually doing it were two completely different things. A gentle knock on the door interrupted their quiet moment. King Charles entered, his presence immediately filling the room with a different kind of energy. He moved slowly, deliberately, as he had learned to do in times of crisis. His eyes met William's first, then Kate's, offering silent support before any words were spoken. The three of them formed a small circle by the window, the morning light creating a natural spotlight around them. This was their family council, the inner circle where real decisions were made, away from advisors and protocol experts. Here, they were simply a father, son, and daughter-in-law, facing an uncertain future together. Charles spoke first, his voice gentle but firm. He had been thinking about this moment since Kate first shared her news. As king, he understood the complexities of public life. As a father and grandfather, he understood the need to protect family above all else. The balance between these two roles had never felt more important. Kate found her voice next, speaking the words she had practiced but never said out loud in this setting. The medical diagnosis was serious, but treatable. The doctors were optimistic, but the treatment would be long and difficult. She wanted to be honest with the people who had supported her for so many years, but she also wanted to maintain some privacy for her children. William listened as Kate spoke, his heart both breaking and swelling with pride. Her courage in this moment reminded him why he had fallen in love with her all those years ago. She faced challenges the same way she faced everything else, with grace, determination, and an unwavering commitment to doing what was right for others, even when it was difficult for herself. The conversation that followed was unlike any they had shared before. Palace protocol usually governed how information was shared and when. But this was about something more fundamental than royal procedure. This was about human vulnerability and the courage to show the world that even people in extraordinary positions faced ordinary fears and challenges. Charles shared stories from his own experience with public scrutiny during difficult personal times. He talked about the lessons he had learned about the difference between privacy and secrecy, between protecting family and hiding from responsibility. His words carried the weight of decades spent in the public eye. Outside the drawing room, palace staff continued their morning routines, but the atmosphere had shifted. Word was beginning to spread that something important was happening. The head of household staff had received instructions to clear the prince's schedule for the rest of the day. The communication team had been asked to prepare for a possible announcement, though they hadn't been told what kind. Kate's children were at school, safe in their normal routine, while their parents made decisions that would affect their lives in ways they couldn't yet understand. The desire to protect them while also being honest about family challenges created another layer of complexity to an already difficult situation. William watched his father and wife discuss the practical aspects of going public with Kate's diagnosis. They talked about timing, about the right way to frame the information, about how to maintain dignity while being vulnerable. But underneath all the logistics, William could feel the emotional current running through the room. The decision, when it came, felt both inevitable and revolutionary. They would be honest. They would share Kate's health challenge with the public, not because they had to, but because they chose to. It would be done on their terms, in their way, with their words. Charles stood up slowly, the weight of royal authority settling back onto his shoulders. He had given his approval not just as a king, but as a father who trusted his son and daughter-in-law to navigate this challenge with wisdom and grace. The monarchy had survived many storms by adapting to change rather than fighting it. Kate felt a mixture of relief and anxiety as the decision was finalized. Relief, because the secret no longer had to be carried alone. Anxiety, because once the words were spoken publicly, there would be no taking them back. The world would know, and the world would have opinions. The room fell into a comfortable silence as each of them contemplated what came next. The morning sun had moved across the sky, changing the light in the room from golden to silver. Time was moving forward, as it always did, carrying them toward a moment that would define not just their personal story, but also a new chapter in the royal family's relationship with the public. William and Kate exchanged a look that said everything words couldn't express. They were about to step into unknown territory together, just as they had done on their wedding day, when they became parents. And during every major moment of their shared life. The difference now was that this journey would be witnessed by millions of people around the world. Charles moved toward the door, understanding instinctively that his son and daughter-in-law needed a few more minutes alone before the machinery of public announcement began to move. He paused at the threshold, looking back at them with eyes that held both concern and admiration. The palace around them seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the building itself understood that history was being made within its walls. Soon, the quiet morning would give way to the controlled chaos of media management, public statements, and global attention. But for now, in this moment, there was still peace. The palace's communication room buzzed with careful activity as the announcement was prepared. Every word was chosen with precision, balancing honesty with privacy, vulnerability with strength. Kate had insisted on writing parts of the statement herself, wanting her own voice to come through in the message that would soon reach millions of people around the world. William stood beside the window in his private office, watching the normal world continue outside the palace gates. People walked by on their way to work. Tourists took photos. Life carried on as usual. In a few hours, those same people would stop and read the news on their phones, and everything would feel different. The weight of public reaction pressed on his mind. He knew the outpouring of support would be enormous, but he also knew that criticism would come from unexpected places. Some would say they shared too much. Others would say they didn't share enough. The balance between being relatable and maintaining royal dignity had always been delicate, and today they were walking that line more carefully than ever. Kate sat in the same drawing room where their morning conversation had taken place, now transformed into a staging area for the announcement. Camera equipment was being set up discreetly, lighting was being tested, and sound levels were being checked. She would speak directly to the people, looking into the camera as if she were speaking to each person individually. Her hands were steady as she reviewed the notes she had written, but her heart beat faster than usual. The words on the paper represented more than just information. They were an invitation for the public to join her family's journey, to understand that even people in extraordinary circumstances faced very human challenges. Charles had retreated to his study, but his phone buzzed constantly with calls from government officials, Commonwealth leaders, and family members who had been informed privately before the public announcement. Each conversation required careful navigation, balancing his role as king with his role as a concerned father-in-law. The children would be told privately before they heard anything from friends or teachers. William and Kate had rehearsed that conversation too, finding age-appropriate ways to explain what was happening without causing unnecessary fear. Their priority was making sure their children felt secure and loved, regardless of what challenges lay ahead. Palace staff moved with practiced efficiency, each person understanding their role in the carefully choreographed process of royal communication. The head of press had worked with the royal family through celebrations and crises, but today felt different. Today felt more personal, more vulnerable than previous announcements. As the afternoon approached, Kate changed into a soft blue outfit that she knew would photograph well, but also made her feel comfortable and confident. The choice of clothing might seem trivial to outsiders, But she understood that every detail would be analyzed and interpreted by media around the world. William joined her in the drawing room as the final preparations were completed. The camera operator, a trusted professional who had worked with the family before, gave them a reassuring nod. The lighting was perfect. The sound was clear, and the setting looked both formal and intimate. The moment arrived with surprising quiet. No fanfare, no countdown. Just Kate, looking directly into the camera and beginning to speak. Her voice was clear and steady as she shared her diagnosis, explained her treatment plan, and asked for privacy during her recovery. She spoke about hope, about the excellent medical care she was receiving, and about her determination to return to her royal duties when she was well. William stood just outside the camera's view, offering silent support. His presence was a comfort to Kate, and his occasional gentle nods encouraged her to continue when emotion threatened to interrupt her words. The strength they drew from each other was visible even to the camera operator, who found himself moved by the intimate display of partnership. When Kate finished speaking, the room fell into a profound silence. The statement had been recorded, but it wouldn't be released for another hour, giving them time to prepare for the immediate aftermath. The words were now fixed, ready to travel around the world, carrying their message of honesty and hope. Charles appeared in the doorway as the equipment was being packed away. His approach was measured and purposeful, and when he reached Kate, he did something that would later be remembered by everyone in the room. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, looked directly into her eyes, and gave the smallest, most reassuring smile. That simple gesture contained everything words couldn't express: royal approval, family support, personal pride, and unconditional love. It was a moment that lasted only seconds, but its impact filled the room and would later be described by staff members as one of the most moving displays of family unity they had ever witnessed. The announcement went live exactly as planned. Within minutes, news outlets around the world were covering the story. Social media filled with messages of support and love. The response was overwhelming in its positivity, with people from all walks of life sharing their own stories of health challenges and family strength. Kate watched some of the early reactions from her private apartment, surrounded by William and their children, who had returned from school. The decision to be open and honest was already proving to be the right one. The public was responding not just as subjects to their future queen, but as fellow human beings facing life's uncertainties together. As evening approached, the palace settled into a different kind of quiet. The announcement had been made. The initial reactions were positive, and now came the longer journey of treatment and recovery. But the family faced that future with the knowledge that they wouldn't be walking the path alone. William took Kate's hand as they stood together at their bedroom window, looking out at the palace grounds bathed in moonlight. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, medical appointments, and continued public attention. But tonight, they had each other. Their children were safe and loved, and the world had shown them a kindness that exceeded their highest hopes. The gentle signal King Charles had given in that moment of quiet support had indeed revealed everything. It showed a family united, a monarchy that could be both strong and vulnerable, and a love that transcended titles and protocol. In choosing honesty over privacy, they had discovered something more valuable than protection from scrutiny. They had found a deeper connection with the people they served and with each other.